course, we're all inside, so. Okay. Okay. So. Okay, I'm going to read the script for remotely conducted meetings and we'll get going. Good morning. This open meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. This meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all phones and devices. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and that's under at the bottom where it says reaction, there's a little smiley face with a plus. That's me ad-libbing. And now I lost my place. The chair will call on those who raised their hands in the order they were raised. All questions should be directed to the chair. If you're not able to participate in the remote meeting, you may also submit comments to the Coastal Resilience Coordinator, Leah Hill, and request that they be read into the meeting record. Her email is lhill@nantucket-ma.gov. Confirming member access. I am Peter Brace, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Okay, no particular order. Doug Rose.
Here.
Gary Beller.
Here.
Tim Brain.
Here.
Jen Carberg.
Here.
Sarah Boyce.
Here.
And then who else do we have here? Rachel Freeman.
Here.
Okay, it's everybody and me, of course, you can see me. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leah Hill.
Here.
Vince Murphy.
Here.
Okay. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Kim Starbuck.
Here.
And we have, I guess she's not on there yet.
You have Alan too.
Alan Bartels, sorry.
Here.
And Kate Edwards.
Kate Edwards.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
It looks like Vicky Marsh is not here yet.
Okay. So finally, each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right. So public comment. This part of public comment is for comments that are not related to any of the items on today's agenda. Is there anybody who has such a public comment? I will stop you if you are starting to comment on things that are on this agenda. Please use the raise hand feature to say if you want to comment or not. Okay, Ms. Jones, and you're on mute. Okay.
You see me? Hi.
Hey, Helena.
I'm actually, my name is Helena Jones and I work at the school, so I'm at my planning time. So I won't be able to be at the rest of the meeting, but I did want to just have a public comment, if that's okay.
Okay,
So,
as long as it has nothing to do with today's agenda.
So I'm going to try to stay as broad as possible. So let me know. But thank you for the opportunity to speak. The first part brings me why I'm speaking now during my planning time is my first comment about the 10 o'clock meetings during workday when we're talking about such important things. Obviously I'm here about myself, but I'm here about the island at large too, for neighborhoods, community, the whole community. So it's just hard to have things at 10 o'clock in the morning. And even though it's remote, like for me, I just happen to have a planning time, thankfully, at 10 o'clock. My husband, he's working on the few days that it's sunny, not gusting 50 miles an hour and not raining. So he's not here. So here I am. Also remote, and I know this is island wide. I just feel it's impersonal, especially it's as a community. I think we should be all meetings should be at least hybrid. This is very uncomfortable for me. I'm a people person and I hate talking into a computer. So I just really want to just put my little 2 cents into the meeting times to be after work and maybe in person. Then the third point is representation. I'm not really sure. I mean, and to most neighbors that I've talked to, I don't really know about, like, you're in the trenches of the town, right? So I'm at school teaching, I go home, whatever. I only stumbled upon this for other reasons, but a lot of people don't know about these work groups. And I know that I'm trying to read your notes, but they're not always on there, and you're not the only committee or work group, but the meeting notes are not on there. And I'm just one person kind of like rummaging through. Certainly an older person or a person that's not that technological would never be able to do this, to find things, but I'm just really concerned about, like, just how the work groups, like where, just even finding out about these. Like, I know my tax bill gets to me and my mail, so maybe, I don't know, getting these out to the neighbors that it would affect, because a lot of what you're talking about does affect me and things that I've worked really hard for. And just even like maybe having some community members that it would affect be on some of these work groups, maybe would be really helpful. Being a teacher for 32 years here on the island, I understand working through a top-down decision-making process versus working together. And to me right now, it does feel a little, and maybe it's just I'm taking it personally because it's around where I live and it's affecting me personally, not just Nantucket, but like right in my neighborhood, right in my house. It just feels top down. It puts my back up. It puts my people around me. It doesn't feel like working together. And I know, like, being a teacher, when you're in the trenches and you're living and knowing what's right for students, when it's top down, you know what's really best. And it just doesn't feel right when top down is making decisions and not
Helena?
including the people in the trenches.
Helena, I'm sorry to interrupt, but for public comment, there's 3 minutes, and
Okay.
and your 3 minutes are over. So Peter, you can decide if you want her to finish, or Helena, you can write me an email.
Helena, how much more do you have?
Well, I didn't know it was 3 minutes. So if you just give me a few minutes, I'll just
we'll give you a couple of more minutes, okay?
Okay. Well, I guess I'm just terrified, I guess, as I just think that a lot of people don't know what's going on. So when I have my coworkers, my husband and I, over 40 years of working really hard to finally have something that we work towards downtown. It's something that we worked for. And when I have my colleagues and my friends and people happen to get the leak in the current of the map of, hey, your house is gone, or hey, do you see that this is happening in your neighborhood that's going to affect us for the long term? And it's not just me, the poor neighbor that has no idea if if something like a wetland is being put next to her house, like that person doesn't have any idea that, and then it needs work. So I'm really concerned that we're all not being brought into this. And like, who's next? Like, if you live near the school, if you live on Evergreen, if you live in Macy's Lane, if you live in Mizamas, like, you're all making decisions on, like, my home. How would you like it if it was your home? How would you like it if it was you step outside and it's your yard? So I just want I'm just coming here and appealing to you as someone who's lived here a really, really long time. And I also care for the island and I want to see it protected. Sometimes I feel like you're pushing the people like me and my husband and my family. I raised 3 kids here. So much that you want to save the island that you're not going to have the people here who are the grassroots of the island here anymore. So I know like you all put a lot of time and work into everything. And I know I sound like I'm, not appreciative, but it's just, it's hard to find things in the media and for people that I'm not a big media person. And sometimes I think it's like people are all like, jump on the comments on Facebook. All that's not healthy. So I'm just coming to you as a concerned neighbor and a concerned island person. And I don't know how to involve us neighbors more. But I don't know. That's just my comment.
Okay, Helena, there's 2 other people that want to speak, but I just want to say a few things. So stick around, okay?
I'll try. I have students waiting, but I'll try.
Okay, just a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
So on the issue of, including other people on the committee, when the committee was formed in 2020, there was an ad in the paper. There's notices that went out. There were stories that were written about what was happening, asking for people who would like to be at-large members on the committee, and then you apply to the town for that. So that was not done behind the scenes. Then the select board decided which members of which committees in town needed to be representative on this committee, and then form the committee in that way. So it was not done behind the scenes. In terms of having a meeting at night, the thing is, we could switch it to 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but then there'll be that person that'll come along and say, well, I can't go because I got to work then, or I have to take care of my kids, I can't watch. And so it's a good thing that it's on YouTube, because then you can go and watch it whenever you want. Then you can write a letter to the editor. You can send your comments into Leah, and those comments will become part of our record, so we'll know what you want to do. But now that you're involved and you know that we meet, then you can attend by watching the Zoom meetings and then commenting. And then in terms of, just getting the word out, the newspapers cover us somewhat. Sometimes we're in Current, sometimes we're in the Inky. We can't control that. We post the meetings according to the law, which is 48 hours notice, and that's what we're required to do. And the town, doesn't have the time or the money to go to every single property owner on the island and say, hey, this meeting is happening, and hey, this is going on. It's more or less up to you to get the information to find it out. We do our best. We post once a week on social media, telling people what's going on. And well, that's what I got to say. And Vince has something to say, and I'm sure it's going to be more eloquent than what I said. Go ahead, Vince.
Very kind, thanks, Peter. And thank you for guiding us through open meeting law for posting and meeting times that are at the pleasure of this committee. Very simply, Helena and I have spoken in the past about the Washington Street Work Group, and I'm fully aware that the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee has an interest in the work of the Washington Street Work Group, and I'm very happy to meet again with Helena offline as needed to brief her on and explain when and where and how to attend the hybrid Washington Street Work Group meetings, and also how the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee works on that group too, through the work that Leah and I, as primarily Leah as the representative for the committee of sorts, as the Coastal Resilience Coordinator. But I'm very happy to meet with Helena and make sure that we can work to clear up any misunderstandings and get her all and any information she needs. And
you pronounce her name Helena.
Sincere apology.
Helena.
I beg your pardon.
Okay.
I'm thinking of my cousin. Apologies.
That's all right, Vince. Go ahead, Matt.
No, the other, I was going to say, I was going to suggest what Vince just did about the Washington Street Work Group. I think the other thing that we should understand is that this group is advisory to the select board. We are not making these decisions. Town meeting and the select board and, you know, everyone else will make the, you know, the funding decisions, the purchase decisions, you know, how we do it. And the other thing that, you know, sort of that has struck me, I thought that there were ways in places like Washington Street or Brant Point to stop the water, and we're not going to be able to stop it. It's going to come up from underground. It's going to impact those neighborhoods. It's going to impact Mid-Island neighborhoods. It's going to impact areas next to wetlands, whether we do anything or not. And so I think that, you know, the work we're doing is actually trying to do the opposite, Helena. We're trying to, you know, find ways to, you know, sort of stop it or live with it in the areas that we have to live with it. And it's actually to try to keep people here and, you know, and keep access to the boat and access on Washington Street, et cetera, for as long as we can. And so you know, I think, you know, it's advisory and as much input as we can get in a positive, cooperative way with the public and everyone is what we are trying to do. So I think, you know, to pretend and we just can't, we can't just think that, oh, it's going to be fine if we don't do anything. There's stuff we have to do and we're working our way through it. But thank you for showing up and talking with us. And I know how hard your husband works. The guy's amazing, but thank you.
And so before I let you give a short response, Helena, I just want to say, I want to explain a little bit more of what Matt was saying. We don't handle issues with individual property owners. We advise the select board, we advise the planning board, we advise all the other regulatory boards. We say, we think you should do this. We write up our recommendation. We say, go ahead, this is what you think, we think you should do. But that doesn't mean that they're going to do what we advise. Then when it comes to making a decision on something major, the select board's going to hold a public hearing. When it comes to something that's island-wide, it's going to be a town meeting. You're going to be able to come to town meeting and speak up and say, this is how I feel. You're going to be able to rally and get a group together and support it or not. So just because we want to do it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that's right. We need your input so we can make our advisements and our recommendations clearer. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes and then we need to move on with the meeting.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. And again, I'm not here just for me. So I just don't want you, of course, I'm here. Definitely, I'm passionate and of course, feeling defensive for me, but I am also speaking on other neighbors and other people around the community. And it's not just as, you know, things that you're going to discuss today, like the home rule and the assessments and all that, which I'm not talking about, but that is something that is our things that do affect everyone, not just me. So I appreciate it. And so I just want to make that clear. It's just not about me. I'm just here speaking, but because I'm worried about the future of all of this. And thank you about saying that it was in the paper. Of course, I wasn't looking out for it, but there was, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer that for you either, but it's not making us feel or me feel better when it like little bits and pieces are in the paper about like things that, you know, my house gone or a wetland created in our area or whatever. I mean, just what's next. That's all. For people. So that's all, but thank you so much. And we will be more involved. Our neighbors will be more involved because I've talked to them and they didn't know and they're all like, wait, what? Huh? So, but the 10 o'clock is just hard. And I understand what you're saying about after work, but I'm lucky to have a planning time right now. I can't, and with right now, 3 boards would consume my time. It would be Washington Street Group, Harbor Group, and Coastal Resiliency. I have a full-time teaching job. I don't know how I can do it all and be as involved as, you know, and be able to speak up. But thank you so much for listening. And I do have to go, so I can't even, I'll listen to you guys later, but thank you.
Helena, one more thing, okay? One more thing. I urge you to write a letter to the Inquirer and Mirror, urging them to cover our meetings on a regular basis. if they would cover us, if the Nantucket Current would be here every single meeting, then there'd be a report in the paper. So we're all volunteers. We're not the only two people that are paid are Leah and Vincent. The rest of us are volunteers on this committee. And so we don't have the time to go out and say, hey, this happened.
Hmm.
So we need the papers to cover us. We're doing our best to get the information out there. So
Oh, and I also
now,
didn't have Washington Street in 2020. So I'm just saying too, I wouldn't have been as like looking in the paper for those, you know
Right.
what I mean? So that's another thing too. So I just don't, that was just another little thing.
Well, I
But
would
thank
say
you so much.
keep checking the newspaper, keep reading the Nantucket Current, listen to the local radio station, and anything seems out of place, anything you're interested in, then ask questions, go on the town's website, look things up, look at the YouTube videos. You know, it's not a perfect system, but you know, we're doing our very best. We're all sitting here. We'd rather be doing other things maybe, but we care about the island. That's why we're doing this. So we just want to help. All right.
And I understand that, appreciate that too. So I don't want that, certainly you me leaving with you thinking I don't appreciate your volunteer work. So thank
All
you.
right. Thanks for
Okay.
joining us, Helena. Okay. We will get right into item number 4, update and discussion on bylaw and home rule petition for Island's coastal resilience districts and betterments by Kate Edwards, principal engineer for Arcadis, and Vicki Marsh, town council for Nantucket. And I need to say that this item is going to take about an hour, and we'll probably go over a little bit. And I understand if people need to go at the hour mark, at the 2-hour mark, but please bear with us. All right, so go ahead, Kate.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for having me, everybody. I'm Kate Edwards. I'm from Arcadis, for those of you who don't know. We've been honored to be a partner in your coastal resilience planning island-wide. And today I'm here with Vicki Marsh to talk about coastal resilience districts. I know that you guys have put some thoughts together, and we tried to incorporate a lot of those thoughts into the proposal that will be before town meeting in May. So just wanted to give a quick overview. We'll go over some basics for folks who have not heard of this before. We'll talk a little bit about the proposal for Nantucket, and then we have some time for discussion. And as I said, Vicki and Vince are here to answer questions as well. I'm going to lead us through the presentation, and then we'll leave plenty of time for discussion. So a coastal resilience district is really a specially established district, specifically for areas where coastal resilience and risk mitigation need to happen. These districts, the types of districts that the coastal resilience fall under, would complement your existing zoning, building codes, and other land use laws. The biggest thing is they have a clearly defined geographic boundary, and they can be flexible in application and size. The biggest purpose of the Coastal Resilience District is to enhance the municipality's ability and enable you all to collect funds to implement coastal resilience projects. And the coastal resilience projects could be infrastructure, they could be regulatory mechanisms, they could be any number of projects outlined in the Coastal Resilience Plan or others that may come up. And the idea is that it provides a mechanism to fund the projects by the property owners that benefit from them. So in Massachusetts, to establish a coastal resilience district, there's a couple ways to do it. One is through a special act of legislature, which involves putting together a home rule petition, which would need to be approved by town meeting and then filed with the state legislature and go through that process. The other is through municipal bylaws and regulations, which would be adopted by the municipality, again, go through town meeting, could be a zoning bylaw or a general bylaw, and has to be approved by the Attorney General. A couple of similar types of districts. In Boston, in the Ray Flynn Marine Park, there's a climate resiliency infrastructure funding mechanism, which is really an example of a resilience financing district. Tenants of the park pay a share of the city projects that happen directly within the marine park. The payments are assessed the year after an infrastructure investment is completed, spread over 30 years at an interest rate that's available to BPDA at the time of the investment. The annual payment is capped at $250,000 per year, escalating annually based on the rate of inflation. In Maryland, they have established resilience authorities. The state legislature enabled the creation of those authorities. They're a separate authority. They have essentially nonprofit status. They're able to issue bonds and they fund infrastructure projects. This is kind of a different type of district. The authority kind of allows for decision making outside of the political process. So just some examples, not exactly the same, but some things that are going on out there in the world. And on Nantucket, the land constituting the island's coastal resilience district, the proposed coastal resilience district, is the entirety of the island of Nantucket and Tuckernuck and Muskeget. The purpose is to provide for shared funding among the property owners in the respective coastal resilience districts who benefit from the coastal resilience projects and improvements. The idea is to provide funding for planning, construction, monitoring, and maintenance in each coastal resilience district. The island-wide the island's coastal resilience district would be formed, and then sub-districts could be formed after that. Those would enable the town to undertake projects to mitigate against the effects of coastal erosion and shoreline change to the town's coastline, sea level rise, flooding, or other coastal hazards. These come directly from the way the warrant is written, the warrant article and bylaw. The initial district, as I said, would incorporate the entire town and county, and moving forward, sub-districts could be formed with select board approval. Those sub-districts might be defined based on existing and predicted flood and erosion hazards. I know a lot of you have seen these before. These are the types of hazards that were looked at for the coastal resilience plan, and moving forward, may be areas where projects would be most likely to take place. The benefits of a coastal resilience district for Nantucket is, as we said, there are a lot of projects in the coastal resilience plan and others that may come up. And you have a need to fund those projects to implement them. The coastal resilience districts would really allow funds to be raised from the people who benefit by establishing the districts. The town is able to clearly define that geographic boundary. So property owners, it's a more transparent way of letting people know that, you know, when you buy a house here, when you move here to this area, you may be looking at some projects in your future and may benefit from them either as a primary beneficiary or a secondary beneficiary, and therefore might need to pay for some of those projects. It has the potential to cover operation and maintenance costs in addition to design and construction, and it is aligned with the purpose of some of your other districts, such as your flood hazard overlay district. And so the current proposal is both. We have, there's 2 warrant articles. The general bylaw would allow the town to create the coastal resilience district by approval of general bylaw at the town meeting. And it would be a stronger way to fund the projects and assess betterments really once the home rule petition goes through, because that district would be well defined and everybody would know that that would be the area where betterments would be assessed. But we can talk in a little bit, we'll talk in a little bit about kind of the difference between just doing betterments now versus.
Can I interrupt you
Yes.
just for a minute, Kate?
Yep.
I know that we're all in the choir here and that we're all aware, but just so you know, and when you keep talking about this, or if you have to talk to anyone else about home rule petitions, a key point of a home rule petition is that it needs, over a general bylaw vote, is that you need a 2/3 majority vote of town meeting. If you don't get that, it doesn't go up to the legislature. So just, I know we all know that, but it's important to make that point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. I love that you added that. That is an important point. So that home rule petition does have to go, it's special legislation at the state level, as we discussed. The town would be authorized to assess betterments within that specifically defined coastal resilience district. Those geographic boundaries are very well defined. And then authorizes the town to undertake the necessary projects and fund them through assessments of betterments, specifically for the properties that benefit by those projects. So you're kind of at this phase, step one, there's a lot to work out. So I just kind of want to put that out there, right? So the first part is getting, potentially putting, 2 warrant articles together, which we have put together. The general bylaw is proposed and the home rule petition is proposed. The general bylaw and home rule petition have to be approved at town meeting to move forward. And then the home rule petition would be submitted to the state and considered by the state legislature, hopefully approved. And then at that point, select board would consider how best to establish any sub-districts and kind of work through a payment structure. And then it kind of goes in a cycle moving forward, depending on what projects you need to implement. Those sub-district boundaries can be defined and the payment structure could be set. So really the next step for Nantucket is there's a town meeting vote on 2 warrant articles, Article 67 and Article 69 coming up. And those will be for town meeting consideration in May. And then I do want to bring Vicky in here. This is kind of our last piece, but then we can move on to discussion. But we do know there's some very kind of nuanced conversation about the use of betterments now versus moving towards the district. So I wanted to let Vicky kind of talk about that.
Thank you very much, Kate. I'm Vicky Marsh. I'm town council. I'm from KP Law. I have been working on these projects for a while now, and I hope that I can offer some insight and address some of the questions that you may have about betterments and how to apply them in the coastal resilience districts as well. So it's important to recognize, and I'm going to speak first about the general process of betterments, but it's important to recognize that betterments are really a form of a tax on real property, and it's assessed by the authorized board, and can be assessed by the select board, having control over the property that's being improved. Betterments are really a mechanism for helping to fund and pay for the public improvements that the governmental body is making on whether it's roadways, utilities, be it sewer, water, sidewalks. All of these types of improvements can be paid for by betterments. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 80 governs is the statute for the assessment of betterments and the process that governs it as well. The major issue having to do with betterments is that it's being assessed against a particular group of property owners and that have a special benefit from the public improvement that's being made. It's not just to be assessed against parties that get a benefit all over the community. We have to be able to show that a particular project and improvement is going to benefit these particular property owners in a way that doesn't affect the general community. So that's really the key to being able to assess betterments, is that you have to have a public project and that it also has to benefit a particular area of property owners other than just the public community at large. So the process for assessing betterments can be assessed against primary beneficiaries of the public improvement, as well as secondary beneficiaries. So there can be two classes of betterments assessed for one particular project. For instance, if, there was a group of property owners that lived right adjacent to the water and were suffering greater damage and were at greater risk, a public improvement project might have a significant benefit to those people. And then as you go further away from the coastline, the people who are property owners further away will have less of a benefit, but still a benefit from this public improvement project, and therefore, could be assessed betterments for paying for the project that they will receive the benefit from. As I said, there are also water special assessments that can be made, sewer betterments, sidewalk and stormwater drain benefits. They're also governed by separate statutes, but they also can be incorporated into a project under Chapter 80 of the general laws. I want to point out that there are certain properties, the governmental agencies and bodies, if they own property, they are not assessed betterments for the property that they own. But if they do receive a benefit, perhaps you can account for them in the amount of the assessments of the betterments to the remaining property owners in that particular district. Individuals that have charities, religious and other organizations, nonprofits, they are eligible for some kind of exemption occasionally, but they are responsible for being assessed the betterment that is filed against their property as well. So the assessment project really, the mechanism for assessing betterments is, the first step is really to create a project that is a public improvement project that's going to benefit a specific part of Nantucket in this case, and the community at large is not really a beneficiary of the project. And this will give rise to the right for the town to be able to assess the betterments against this particular area of property owners. Once you've established that you have a project, then you are going to want to establish what your estimated cost for this project is going to be. And so you're going to have to get an appropriation from town meeting to be able to pay for the project that's going to be undertaken. And that will eventually be paid back through betterments. But without the initial appropriation at town meeting, the town does not have the means to be able to fund this project going forward. And an appropriation at town meeting requires a 2/3 vote in order to be able to proceed with the public improvement project. Once that has happened, if town meeting approves of this project, then there would be an order which would be adopted by the select board, or if there are county roads, the county commissioners, for instance, may be involved in the approval process. But primarily, it would be the select board that would be the assessing board in this case. And they would adopt an order for this project to enter into a contract for the project with construction of the improvements, and perhaps there may be even a borrowing that would also be authorized to make these improvements. It's very difficult sometimes to estimate what a total cost of a project is going to be, especially when you're at the early stages and not experiencing what kind of issues may come up as you're doing a project. But unfortunately, when you're going to be setting these betterments, you are not going to be allowed to exceed the cost of the estimates once you're getting a final approval for this project. So we always recommend that the towns conservatively estimate what these projects could cost, and and then possibly the actual costs will come in under the estimates. If they come in over the estimates, then we cannot assess betterments for the amount that exceeds that estimated cost. So it's really important to take into consideration all of the elements that could be involved in betterments. And that may not just be for just construction costs. It can be for operation and maintenance of what the improvements are. It can also include legal expenses that are incurred and potentially even damages that may need to be paid out to property owners while the municipality is undertaking the project. So all of these can be incorporated into the cost for the betterments that can be assessed down the road. And so once you've established the costs and you've put on an order, you've recorded an order with the Registry of Deeds, or if it's registered land with the Registry District of the Land Court, that has to be done within 6 months after the order is approved. It must be recorded. And then after that, the project is undertaken, and there has to be plans recorded for the project as well. And after the completion of the project, then there is a final statement recorded with a final assessment of the betterments that are recorded. And the select board then assesses the amount of the betterment to each of the property owners that are in the particular area receiving the benefit from the betterments. So subsequently, the betterment assessment is put on the tax bill and would be paid off with the taxes. There'd be a payment on that. I also want to point out that the project also, the payments also can be paid out over a period of 20 years. And or they can be paid out in lump sums if the property owners wish, but they can be spread out over a period of 20 years. And the interest rate, depending upon the statutory requirements at the time, would be assessed in addition to that. And excuse me, unless there's a special act that would change the amount of the interest that would be due. So I think that outlines the pretty much the betterment assessment process itself. And the one thing that I think is really important, and Kate has pointed out, is that by having coastal resilience districts, it eliminates a lot of the uncertainty as to whether you're going to be in a district that's going to potentially be assessed a betterment or not. As a homeowner, it provides, a level of certainty, and you can see the actual project being designed for that particular area. There are certain areas on Nantucket that, projects will need to be defined and created to mitigate the potential effects in that area, which are not obviously, going to be felt in a different part of the island due to the nature of the island in a particular coastal resilience district. So it provides a level of certainty. It also provides a means of funding that is much easier to explain to the public and can be supported at town meeting with a vote for an appropriation for the project. I think those are the general questions. I did try to address some of the questions that you had presented in questions that I had received, but certainly if I haven't addressed your specific question, or if you have additional information that you'd like me to explain, I'm certainly here to do that. So I welcome your questions and your opinions.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Actually 3. But thank you. Thanks, Vicki. Appreciate it very much.
Welcome.
So knowing what you know of Nantucket, do you have specific examples of where sub-districts would definitely apply on Nantucket? I mean, we all know the island because we live here, but you know it because you're our attorney. So I'm just wondering if you have had in your mind, oh yeah, that's a district for sure,
Well, I've been very involved in the Baxter Road area for a number of years. I've been working on the relocation plan out there with the town officials. So I can certainly envision that that particular area could be defined as a separate sub-coastal resilience district, to have a project that is designed for that particular to be paid for in betterments perhaps by those residents that are out there. And as I said, some may be primary beneficiaries of the project, some may be secondary, depending upon how large the district is that's ultimately created. But I do see that as definitely, could be a potential district, sub-district, yes.
All right, thanks, Vicki. Before I go to Gary, I've got sort of a follow-up question to that. So how do you determine, I mean, what is the minimum percentage of property owners who will directly benefit from the project? You could pick an area like, I don't know, Smith Point neighborhood, all the houses, the people that own houses there between the west side of the bridge and where you go onto the beach is a little neighborhood. And conceivably, I think maybe more than conceivably, we're going to need to build a better bridge there. And so that could be a CRD benefit. It could be a district right there for that. And certainly all the people that are in that neighborhood are going to benefit because they need to get across the bridge. But then there's all the people who travel across the bridge to go out to Smith Point. So how do you, I'm just trying to, there has to be a minimum number of, maybe there doesn't, I'm trying to understand it. How do you come up with the amount of people that are going to be in the benefit district? How are they going to, and I know you said secondary and primary, so maybe that figures in. Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
I do. I think that the people who may get out there who are not residents of Smith Point but want to get out to the beach, is that what you envision them using that bridge for?
Well, I'm just saying that, you could isolate a certain area and say this area needs this project and these people directly benefit from this, from the project. And so I guess, how do you decide between the people who directly benefit and the people who sometimes benefit and get to use oh, great, I don't have to pay because I don't live there, but I'm still going to go out to Smith Point. So how are you going to do that? Because you got, how are you going to nail the people who are just here visiting for a week and go out there and determine between those people and the people who live here year round who go out and fish on Smith Point all the time? And I'm just sort of testing out arguments that may come onto the town meeting floor or letters to the editor or complaints or whatever that are going to say, well, that's not fair. Why do we all have to pay and those people that come and use the beach don't? And, or whatever part of the island it is. So.
I understand, what you're trying to drive at, about it. I think that it's just going to have, select board takes a look at a project to determine, well, first of all, in creating the district, it's going to be up to the select board to define what the district is going to.
You're kind of breaking up there, Vicki.
I can assist Peter if you don't mind. Through you, Peter, of course.
I hear you, Vince. Hold on. Okay, Vicki, we're going to let Vince sort of take over. You seem to be frozen there, and then come back in when. So go ahead, Vince.
Thank you, Peter. So the example of using, say, Smith's Point or Baxter Road is an interesting one. It does ultimately have to get decided by the select board for the sake of argument. But if you look at somewhere like Smith's Point, which is a really cool example, then most of the property out there is owned by, say, the town. There's only a small number of properties out there on esters that are private, and in Smith's Point Village, as it's called, across the bridge. So you'd have to say, well, you have to work it out. The public benefit of the area as a public beach, a public driving beach, versus the interests of I think there's roughly about 55 properties in Smiths Point Village and Esther's Island, roughly speaking, that have homes on them. So this is the question, and then this is the thing that you have to work out, and there is no solid answer to this at this early point. Would it be something like a 50-50 split? Would it be a 70-30 split? Don't know. Because there's such large public benefit to the area on Smiths Point, that makes it a kind of a tough question. You're right. Then if you go back to the Baxter Road example, and if there's something done like a retreat plan, and there's benefit there and it doesn't have any effect on the beach, just using that as a scenario, then it primarily benefits the people with homes in the area. And then you can understand where there's water lines, sewer lines, access that's required. That ends up in a scenario where there's no real significant effect on town property except the public road. Then you end up understanding that most of the impact would be towards the private homeowner. It effectively comes down to where the public benefit is, if there is or not, first of all, and then secondarily, how you account for it. And that's not an easy undertaking.
All right, thank you, Vince. I want to go with Gary next. Leah, do you think that Kate and Vicky are coming back?
Vicky's asking if there's a phone number to call in on, and I'm trying to figure that out right now.
Okay.
Kate
I'm
is
still here.
Okay, I'm going to go with Gary.
Thank you, Peter. First of all, Peter, I want to thank you and Leah for setting this meeting up with this excellent deep dive into these issues, which we've been talking about for the last year or so. And I think it's really great that we have these experts with us who are able to give us, to put some flesh on these bones, because, as I say, we've been talking about these kind of in the background about how we get stuff done. So thank you for setting up the meeting the way you have. One thing that I learned from the initial presentation is that there isn't a choice between coastal resilience districts and betterments. In fact, they work together. If you have a coastal resilience district, then at least it's a way to understand how you put the betterment together. In the past, I have kept thinking we might have to choose one or the other. I now realize that they work together on everything that we may do. So one of the questions that I have, and which I indicated a little bit into my note prior to the meeting, was how these projects get initiated. And the question I kind of raised is whether or not they get initiated by the town deciding that we need to extend the sewer lines or something. That would be like a town decision. Or would it be people in a particular community that say, you know, the septic tanks thing, it's not really working for us. We really want to do that. And so we're willing to foot the bill for this in some portion. So the question is, where do these initiatives normally come from? Do they start always with the select board, with the town, or do they actually come from sometimes the community? And the third point I wanted to use as an example, we have two lighthouses on the island. We have the Sankaty Lighthouse and we have the Grand Point Lighthouse. And let's suppose that at some point, because of the issues we're dealing with on flooding or rising tides, rising water levels, both need to be raised. So I'm just thinking of using that as an example. Is that something that in either case might be a community expense, or would it in each case be a island expense? Who makes those decisions? That's my curiosity. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Vince.
Thank you very kindly, Peter. The lighthouse example is particularly interesting. So you say Brant Point Lighthouse, the US Coast Guard own that, so that's primarily there. The town doesn't own the lighthouse. Sankaty Head Lighthouse, that is owned by Sconset Trust. So that's a separate one again. And then the one at Great Point, that is, if I remember rightly, still owned, no, I think it's owned by the Trustees of Reservations now, open to being corrected on that. So it comes down to the property owner for individual structures like that. And you ask a question about, does a group of property owners approach the town, or does the town want to just move forward with, say, something from the CRP? Both, I would say, could be possibilities. So this is kind of for areas where there's a group of neighbors that have some jeopardy, some coastal risk that we know about that has an imminent problem, and where there might also be some level of a town interest, say a beach access point or a car park or a public road or some other facility that the town owns, then that they make for what you might call good candidate projects, to either be suggested by neighbours or to be followed through from the Coastal Resilience Plan. So it's kind of not aimed at isolated, though it could be, not really aimed at isolated individual structures like lighthouses that aren't necessarily our responsibility, but where we can try and keep communities in place and town beach access or town facilities.
Before I go, thanks, Vince. Before I go to Matt, just so that you understand, Gary, the individual property owners own the, they may own those lighthouses, but the Coast Guard maintains them as aids to navigation. So they handle the infrastructure, they handle the technical of all those lighthouses, just so you know that. And go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, a couple of things. They're not, like Peter was talking about, it's not numbers based. It's not how many homes in a specific area or properties in an area. It'll be more based, whether it's a betterment or a coastal resiliency district, will be based on the impacts that they're feeling, the geographical, makeup of that area, what the impacts are. I think of it like Brant Point, sort of to the foot of the Cliff Road Bluff. I would think all of those are in the same watershed and would all be similarly impacted. And so, I think that Sheep Pond Road, there's 5 or 6 houses that are all sort of similarly impacted. They'd be in one area together. They already are, and they've been bettered before. And I think one of the key points of that is, if you only have one house and it costs you $100 million, we aren't going to do it. But if you have 100 houses and it costs you $1 million, we probably will, or the neighborhood will probably embrace it. So part of this, by using betterments as, at least for a portion of it, you are making smarter decisions than putting it all on the tax base. When we did the sewer and looked really deep dive into the sewer, and we set up sewer districts, there was a huge push on the island to sewer the entire island because of the development it would have provided, because of, we want to save the island. It'll make the island better. It'll be more, it's going to be more ecological. Well, we've come to find out is we were lucky that we did it the way we did, because what we're finding is, as you sewer more, it isn't more ecological. There's more runoff and more of everything else. It overcomes the good that the sewer did. So I think, so the same idea is going to happen here. People are going to say, I don't want to pay. I want someone else to pay. The answer that I think we found then to the payment issue, when someone's saying, why do I have to pay? The answer is, it's cheaper if you pay for your own part of your own benefit than if you pay for everybody. If we put this all on the tax base, you're not going to afford to stay here. That was the answer that kind of won the day in that situation. I would say the select board, I think CRAC or some other committee has to come up with the recommendations. I don't think that these, how we're going to, sort of trying to decide what the area is or how much to charge the public versus the neighbors. Those issues have to be done in a committee at this level or in a separate committee with town staff to bring a recommendation forward. That is not something that can be done on a Wednesday night with the select board, and with everything else that Libby has to deal with and the select board have to deal with. So there'll have to be, when we did the sewer, there was, you know, the sewer commission, we didn't even have a sewer commissioner then, but there was the DPW was involved, and Finn and I did a lot of work, and Libby, there was, you know, there has to be a good recommendations with a lot of thought and public hearings that go into the formation of these. And that's whether it's a coastal resiliency district or a betterment district. Both of those have to have a lot of thought and input. It just can't be done on a Wednesday night on a whim. And it can't be done
Hello?
based on pressure from the, you know, from the public, like, we don't want to pay, because if it's done that way, I'll show up and yell and scream, and people will, you know, sort of bow to it, you know, to the pressure.
Hello?
Thanks. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, I apologize. I really am sorry. I'm away on vacation and this internet is not my normal internet. So I really do apologize. I'm very sorry.
That's okay. We're going to go ahead and let the other people who have their hands up, and then we'll ask for more comments. And if we don't, then you and Katie can wrap up for us. Does that sound okay to you, Vicki?
Yes, absolutely. Please let me know. And I you know, I'm happy to stay over. I know that I had, you know, caused this delay, so I'm really sorry. So
all right.
Feel
The
free
delay
to
started at the beginning of the
ask me any
meeting, but that's
questions.
all right. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is there, in betterments, is there a mechanism for the property owners affected to have input into what the project is and how the costs are you know, split up? And is that made better? Is that process made better by having a CRD?
Well, I would say, first off, of course, there'll be transparency, and these aren't going to be done in a back room, and the public will have a chance to comment and raise hell and shut it down or support it or whatever. We're you know, given what we had for a conversation at the beginning of this meeting, remember, the public, absolutely, of course, we're going to talk about it so that everybody has a chance, and we're going to publicize it. So then the rest of it I can't answer. So either Vicki or Katie or Vince.
So
Vince,
I would say.
Wait.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Okay. So I would say that, you know, Peter is correct that, you know, these projects will be discussed. There'll be hearings, you know, to establish, you know, what the nature of the project is, and, you know, obviously disclose what the potential costs of these projects are. You know, and then ultimately the select board has an opportunity to decide to bring this project forward if they so choose, and bring it to town meeting. And try to get an appropriation for the project. So there is, you know, opportunity, you know, at different public hearings and meetings to be able to, you know, voice your approval or your concern over a particular project. And then the betterments are basically assessed based upon, you know, the overall cost of the project, the number of people who are affected in the particular district, and then they would be divided up.
All right, Vince.
Thank you, Peter. I will echo all of that and add one crucial extra word: stakeholders. Basically, in the model that any project that the town follows, when we're developing the project, one of the very first things that we always talk about at any level is stakeholders and who's involved. And if you're a property that might be affected in some way, we try and get everybody into the tent and everybody working on it together, and trying to make it a little bit more collaborative and understood, so that when we, you know, come forward with a plan, we might have a plan that people would broadly agree with rather than broadly object to. And that's just, you know, smart planning, and a very positive, public orientated way of putting forward any projects. It could also be the case that the CRP might not be the guide, and a group of homeowners might say, hey, we've got this we've got this risk in our area. We'd like to approach the town, the select board, with an idea for our area, to see if that could work as well. So there's a secondary route too. It doesn't just have to be from the CRP, where we could have projects brought forward that already have public support because the neighbors suggest it. There's a potential that that could be a source of betterments or coastal resilience districts as well, with the neighbors bringing it to us.
Thanks, Vince. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Peter. I read a document online. I did a fair amount of Google searching on the whole topic of betterments prior to this meeting, and I came across one. I don't recall which agency it was that put it out, but I thought it was a really interesting way to frame the idea of betterments. And the way they expressed it was that betterments enable municipalities to offer financial help to homeowners, either individually or as groups, that can be used to repair, replace, or improve infrastructure that directly benefits those homeowners. So it's almost like turning the idea of a betterment on its head. This isn't something that the town is imposing on an unwilling group of homeowners. When it's done properly, as I think Vince was saying, when all the stakeholders are actually lobbying for a project that they understand will benefit them in terms of their home value or what have you, the town is essentially coming to them as a hero and saying, well, we can offer better financing, we can issue a bond, and you ultimately pay that back. It's a win-win for everyone involved. So I kind of go back to where Gary was asking earlier on, is this typically done from top down? Is the select board imposing this on a group of people, or is this bottom up sort of grassroots? I would imagine, listening to everyone speaking today, that everyone likes the idea better of a grassroots, a bottom up approach towards toward betterments. And the other thing I wanted to just say was, I do feel like we have made this topic unnecessarily complicated, in the sense that we continue to get it wound around the whole issue of coastal resilience. But I'll pick an example. The idea of raising Easton Road and Holbert Road, those are considered coastal resilience projects, but they're also road improvements. And if they were regarded simply as road improvements that are they're being initiated in order to maintain a greater resilience to those roads, they would be a betterment like any other betterment. So I really feel like, to some degree, we are creating a word salad here that is making life a whole lot more complicated. I've also heard one other thing, and I'll leave it there. One other aspect of this discussion I think we continually get hung up in is, well, betterments don't allow us to capture any ongoing operations and maintenance costs. And, that may be true, but if you look at the majority of the big CRP projects, yeah, as they're estimated now, you've got a capital cost, and then you got some estimated operating and maintenance costs for future years. But the big dog, the big hairy beast, is typically the capital cost. So rather than getting hung up for years over discussing around, well, betterments can't handle operating and maintenance costs, whether that is true or not, who cares? Let's focus on the capital costs, because that's the big issue. And then we can wrestle with the rounding error of operations and maintenance in the future years. And maybe those can be accommodated betterments. All this to say, I feel like this is not as complicated as I feel like we're making it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Joanna next, but I want to say one thing about what you just said before I lose it from my addled brain. For Holbert Ave and Easton Street, and with a huge amount of respect for our Department of Public Works, road improvements that they can make, fine, but in terms of sea level rise, these are specialized projects that happen on roads that we need other people involved for. So it's of course we don't want to make it more complicated, but in some sense, on some levels, it has to be more complicated, because we're talking about a lot of things that have to change other than just repaving, just regrading and repaving. So go ahead, Joanna.
I have two thoughts on this, really. One of which is the context, which I think Doug was trying to get at, which what we haven't heard about today on here is, how has this worked on Nantucket successfully before, the betterments, right? Like, what is the context in which there is success with a program like this? Because I really think we need to look at examples of where this has worked and be able to share them. And it may be that we haven't done it extensively on Nantucket before, but there's got to be other places. I know we spoke with the woman in Rhode Island, where we can look at examples of where this has worked and how it has worked, right? Number one. The other concern that I have is voter appetite. right? So we are about to go into a town meeting where there are lots, well, many other requests for large amounts of money. And I feel like a home rule petition on a citizen warrant that basically is looking for money for our island home, a large amount of money for housing and other expenses, that this kind of gets lost in those requests, and I'm worried about that.
Thanks, Joanna. I see you, Vince. Matt's waiting. I'm gonna do Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
You can go to Vince. I'll go.
Okay, Vince, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm so incredibly sorry to have to bring this in, but it was one of the hard things that Vicky and Kate and I had to bring into the Coastal Resilience Districts, because it was written in at the bullet point phase last September, is to work it at 2 levels. So it's not just home rule petition and bylaw, it's also working at big project and small project. The whole island, all the landmass that is the county effectively is the Coastal Resilience District area. And then the idea is that you then are able to set up sub-districts as well. So the big projects, the capital type projects, that can go for the whole island. And that's a kind of the kind of thing you do in coordination with Capcom and FinCom. They're the big projects. Then the smaller projects, the far more frequently used idea would be for the small coastal resilience sub-districts, for groups of houses, for particular roads, for neighborhoods. So this was something that the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee asked us to work in. We had to brainstorm on. We found that, yes, go exactly with what the committee asked for and have a 2-tier system within the bylaw, so that we can have the island-wide for large projects and the sub-districts for small projects. That kind of gets to exactly what Joanna and Doug were talking about. And thank you, Peter, for allowing me to bring up the 2-level system in that.
Thanks, Vince. Matt?
Yeah,
You're
no,
muted.
one advantage of doing a betterment or a district is that you could say, well, if the neighbors really want it, why don't they just do it themselves? And it doesn't work because some of the neighbors just won't pay. And so by having a betterment district in place that they all say they want at the beginning, then everybody pays, and some people can pay right away. Other people can pay over time. They can pay, up to year 20, or in some cases they don't pay at all, and it's paid when the house is sold. There's different ways to do this, but I think that's one huge advantage. Everyone may want it, but this enables it to be spread out over more years and in a better way to pay it. And the other advantage of doing these, partly because of all the expenses we have, is this is a way of stretching the town's dollars. If we're just going to town meeting to get votes on the big stuff, then we're going to be trying to get big stuff and not get it. So I think this, betterments are a way to get more projects done more quickly. And the other thing, based on what Vince was saying about, the large projects will be the whole island and the others will be the small. We won't know that until we get into the numbers. We won't know that until we put some of this onto a spreadsheet. There may be, it may be that there's a large project for some area that they're willing to do, but it's only 4 houses. The rest of the town can't afford to pay, $100 million to put a bridge to 4 houses. Let's just pretend. And so there might be, that's where you won't know on a specific item. You can't just say the more expensive it is, we're all going to pay, because that'll end up, and I know a lot of this from just doing the sewer stuff. Where have betterments worked? We've used them at Sheep's Pond and they worked. I'd say a lot of the sewer stuff, is bettered. We are able to pay for the plant because we're charging a bit more to all the new connections. It's not the full amount, but it's probably about half. And that has done wonders for the sewer department, because it's enabled them to professionalize, have more staff, and still do it in a way that's affordable. So, it's a good model, and, but it's going to take us getting into the details on a few specific projects to work it out. I had one question for Vicky. is can you do more than primary and primary and secondary? Can you do a third or a fourth level in a district, or is it just?
Okay, Vicky, can you just hold on to that? Vicky, can you just hold on to that? So I'm gonna go to Gary, and then you and Kate can hopefully wrap this up, okay?
Okay.
We have
Well,
we have other agenda items to get to, and I don't want to go over too far beyond 12 o'clock. So Gary, go ahead.
okay, when Vicky answers Matt's question, she can answer this question as well. My question is, I can see that to do the coastal resiliency districts, we have to have it approved by the town meeting, and then it has to go to the entire Massachusetts state legislature to be approved. I assume that's what that slide meant. And my question is, and that's going to take a while, can we do betterments during that period? At what point does the state have to approve the betterment process, or is it just something within our control? Those are the questions I have.
All right, Gary, go ahead. Go ahead. Thanks, Gary. Vicky, and then Kate.
Okay, so to Matt's question, I don't see why we probably can't find a way to be able to have primary, secondary, and maybe the third row of beneficiaries, in a particular district. We just have to, find a way to actually create the geographic area that we want to have in the district, and then carve it up based on the actual benefit to the people that live in that particular district. So I think that's the key thing, is creating the actual district that you want to include in the group of property owners that are being benefited. So that would be my comment to that. I also, as to Gary's questions about can we do betterments and the Mass legislature, let me just speak a bit about the process. So once the home rule petition goes up to the State House, I'll be very honest, it takes a good couple of years to get these bills through. I've had a number of Article 97 bills that have been held up for a good couple of years. We're going to need to probably engage our state representatives and senator to sort of try to guide this bill through due to the level of importance to Nantucket, but also I think there's a wider interest in the state of Massachusetts as well. And so, perhaps the administration is going to be looking to welcome something like this as a bill. But it goes up to the legislature. It's going to go through committees. It takes a while. I would envision a couple of years. And in the meantime, the town does have the ability to assess betterments for public improvement projects. Okay, Chapter 80 of the Mass General Laws allows for the town, namely mostly the select board, but also if it was a county road or a county way that was affected, the commissioners, to be able to assess the betterments for the public project. So as long as you have a public project that affects a specific group of residents or property owners, and you meet all the other criteria, you can assess betterments. And we do it also for water projects and like Matt said, for sewer projects. So these are ongoing. You don't have to have state approval to do them. They're authorized by statute. So as long as the select board votes to do that, and you don't have to get the approval to assess the betterment by town meeting. All you need is town meeting to authorize the appropriation for the project, but it's not authorizing the actual assessment of the betterments. And I just wanted to add one other thing to, I think it was Joanna's comments about voter appetite. And because the home rule petition has a provision written into it about the assessment of betterments, as we've discussed, that's going to be a little while before that type of, betterment assessment as a result of the home rule petition comes into play. For the meantime, you can still act on the statutory authority that the town has. So I hope that addresses the questions that you have. And in summary, I would just like to emphasize the fact that we need to focus on not just projects that affect just a few people, but our public projects that affect public improvements to the property owners. They're just not meant to deal with private projects that a particular group of people want to benefit themselves. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And thank
Great.
you. I'm really happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks, Vicki. I have a feeling we may have you guys back for a continuation, since we could talk about this for another 2 hours.
Right.
Definitely.
I'm happy to come anytime, really. I'd be happy to come and address any questions.
Kate?
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify also on the voter appetite. The warrant articles to be voted on are just establishing the district through the bylaw and voting to send the home rule petition to the state. They are not appropriating money at this time for any projects. So they're really just kind of setting the stage for getting the district in place eventually and allowing you to kind of go forward down that path. That doesn't mean, you know, you're going to set up funding and financing today.
Okay, thank you, Kate. I'll get Joanna first, but do you have something quick?
Yep. It's just that what Kate just said is so important. I hope it gets clear. I hope it gets made clear to the people who go to the annual town meeting that they're not authorizing some use expenditure. They're just starting the whole process, and it'll get passed. Otherwise, people will be confused and they may not vote for it. Thank you, Kate.
It's a age-old thing on Nantucket where the majority of the population think there's some big conspiracy where we're going to pry open their wallets and take their money, and that we're doing this behind closed doors, and we're all terrible people, and how come you didn't tell me, and you have a right to tell me. And, you know, like I said to Helena in the beginning, you know, the newspapers don't cover us. When town meeting gets closer, they'll probably pick apart those 2 articles and say what's going on, but it's all we can do to get the word out. So I would just reemphasize that our primary mode of operation these days is public outreach. Anything you guys can think of to get the word out, to explain things, can't help us enough. And thanks, Gary. And go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, I agree with Gary. I don't know if there's a way to have an information session on this prior to the town meeting and kind of talk exactly about what this is, because I just in case members of this call don't know this, but the asks for the Our Island Home and for the Affordable Housing Trust are very, very large. And so I think if you're a voter sitting in that meeting, I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust, I believe, is 85 million, and I think that the old Our Island Home is approaching 90. So I think that, no, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember the exact amount, but
Well,
I
I'm
am
not correcting you. I'm shaking my head because we're nuts to be trying to spend that much money for something we can't even operate well now, but that's a different.
That's a different story.
Okay.
But
Go ahead, Joanna.
I think, Pete, that we as a committee need to very carefully explain what Gary just said, which is that we are starting a process, not charging you money today. And that this is a financing mechanism for a future expenditure because people are going to react to this.
And so maybe I was going to save this till the committee's agenda item, but if there's any way, Leah and the rest of the committee, that we can somehow work with the Inquirer and Mirror or the Current and the radio station to set up a weekly feature where you and I, Leah, sit down with them or set up a series of reports that can go into the media that can explain this. So, I mean, there's got to be a way that we can get it out there that doesn't cost us anything, and also everybody can see it. So anyway, that's that. Vince, go ahead.
Just thinking of media and outreach. So one of the things that we've been doing a lot of recently is kind of PSA type videos what if Leah and I and Peter or others, whoever was interested, or even take snippets from today's meeting potentially to make some kind of 30-second, 1-minute short videos that explain this in a series so that people might understand it before a town meeting, the kind of things that go on social media and get a lot of views. And in coordination, of course, with your suggestion, Peter, about other media outlets and trying to get articles written and such. Would people be interested in us pursuing that?
You guys can shake your heads or nod your heads and just give us a sense of it. Yes? Yes?
All right, because I have to say,
yes.
Joanna had
Okay.
some good sound bites. Doug had some good sound bites. Matt too. I wouldn't mind trying to capture those in a video, and Gary, of course.
Okay, so that's a thing for, maybe we'll make that an agenda item for the next meeting, and between now and then, Leah and I and Vince will talk about it. And I'm going to go to Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to say that as it gets closer to town meeting too, some of the posts on our social media will be about CRDs. I think I put Doug on that and someone else maybe. So we'll have that, and then I just lost my train of thought.
Thanks a lot, Leah.
Oh,
You
two
love
things.
it, Doug.
And then we can write something up to put in the aligned organizations newsletters if they see that as fit. And then I just want to remind everyone that we did put a press release out about, you know, your campaign, your social media campaign, and none of the newspapers contacted me. So just wanted to give that update. Hopefully the papers, you know, will start covering more coastal resiliency stuff. It seems like the public is obviously interested in it, but we'll kind of see how that shakes out.
And I'm going to reach out to Josh Balling to see if we can write something up and put it in the paper every single week. I mean, it could be just a letter to the editor from CRAC. Here's what's going on. No more than 500 words, due by Tuesday at noon. So anyway, it's another option. So here we are. Okay, Gary.
No, I just love Kate's explanation, and we ought to treasure those words and put it into print and make sure people understand it. That's all.
Just be aware that no matter how well we explain it, there's people that are going to say they didn't get it and blame us for it. So just be prepared. Okay, so it's 11:29. We still got a little bit to go. So if there's anything else, hold your hand up. If not, I'll thank everybody for this great discussion that we had. I want to thank Vicki and I want to thank Kate. And we will definitely be having you guys back again. Okay, very good.
We'd be happy. Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody.
Okay, number 5, follow-up discussion with Kim Starbuck, Senior Research Associate at the Urban Harbors Institute, and Alan Bartels, Research Assistant at Urban Harbors Institute, regarding coastal resilience goals and recommendations within the Nantucket and Mattocket Harbor Action Plan. Sorry we took so long, you guys, but go ahead.
No problem. About how long do you think we have?
How long do you need?
I mean, we could go through this fairly quickly if you want, and then defer to future conversation, maybe on the 18th or other meetings, or we could take a little bit longer. It's up to you.
You know, I would say go maybe 15 or 20 minutes, realizing that we're probably going to go to maybe 12, 15. I hope.
Great, that sounds good. So thank you everyone for having us join again. We just wanted to come back and talk to you all about the progress with the harbor plan and talk about how you could get involved more coming up. So the way we've been doing this is at our harbor committee meetings, we have been going through each topic kind of meeting by meeting and going through them with the committee and really fleshing out recommendations and, you know, what issues are occurring. So, you know, we would have a dedicated meeting for natural resources. We had a dedicated meeting for fishing. And so we're coming up on the dedicated meeting for coastal resiliency. And I believe Leah shared the information with you, but it's going to be this upcoming Monday, the 18th. from 1 to 2:30. You can participate through Zoom, or you could go in person to the trailer, 131 Pleasant Street. And, we've talked with the Harbor Committee. They're happy to have you guys come and participate as much as you can. And what we are going to be doing during that meeting is really walking through a document, which Alan, do you want me to share it, or do you want to share it?
I'm happy to share and drive.
Okay. So in just a minute, we'll share with you a document, which I believe you also received in advance, where we've kind of had a document like this for each section. And we go by, it's group work, so it takes a while. We go by line and really talk it out and flesh out the recommendations and what we want to include in the plan. I know not everybody may be available on the 18th, and that is fine. If you would like to email me on the side, we can also set up a side meeting if there's something you really want to talk through. Happy to do that at any point. But, we hope as many of you can attend the 18th as possible. And also, obviously, that meeting will be recorded, so you can watch it back and make sure, your points are being made. But what we wanted to do during this time is just kind of show you what the document is. And one other thing, if you also would like to just email me with comments, that's also another way you can do it. But we wanted to do is just kind of show you the document, walk you through it, because it does look a little like, maybe hard to follow. And, since we don't have that much time, we probably won't solicit too much feedback right now, maybe just a couple minutes at the end to see if you have feedback that we can take in right now. Also, if you would like to, you could send me feedback before the 18th meeting, and I can include that in a new document for the committee. So Alan, do you have any questions about that first before Alan shares with you the document?
Go ahead.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I guess two things to maybe thank you, Kim, and thank you to all the committee for the time here. I guess two things to importance. So this is the harbor plan, and we are focused on our harbor planning area. If everyone can see my screen. Is this coming across okay?
Yes.
So this is our harbor plan area, and so with also a timeline of 5 to 10 years. So for you guys, I know you have long-term plans and short-term plans. This is a part of the harbor plan update, which is a cycle that happens every 10 years. And so we're trying to capture, I guess, the committee or soliciting your feedback on projects that or things that we can do in the next 5 to 10 years that we can put into the state submitted plan that can help set you guys best up for all the work that you're doing, especially in regards to coastal resilience. And so this is so now can everyone see my kind of matrix grid?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So coastal resilience, and because we started our process looking at all the projects within our harbor plan boundary, a lot of these specific projects or a lot of things we're discussing today is around infrastructure as compared to something like eelgrass and natural resources, which might appear in one of the natural resource sections of our harbor plan. So for this, so these were taken, or issues identified in this matrix were taken from public comment. The first one, which surprise, one of the largest pieces of public comment we got was ensuring that there was cohesion between plans. It seems like the public is aware of the coastal resilience plan, and they want to make sure that our harbor plan goes aligned. And so what we're doing, so our suggestions, recommendations, was to have intercommittee meetings to share objectives, challenges, and project prioritizations. We're doing that right now, so achieving our first recommendation. We also heard to highlight living sections of the CRP within the harbor plan, allowing reflecting changing conditions and increasing risk. To work with partners to address identified data and planning gaps through public comment, as well as discussions with Leah Hill and Vince. There we identified kind of multiple studies, so need for groundwater sea level rise modeling, need for say for wetland for where future wetland development, need research on floodwall locations, need Jackson Point boat ramp study, more planning for alternative steamship authority locations, or a need study for additional in-town boat ramp. And so I'm going to list this right now, but if there are other studies that you guys feel need, this is an opportunity to put them into a plan so that it gets for kind of state submission. Work with underrepresented communities to address their climate needs and interests related to ecological restoration, coastal resilience, relocation, or climate disruptions. Another major issue identified for public comment was rising sea levels. So one of our recommendations to the harbor plan is to utilize the coastal resilience plan for flooding and erosion planning, and to integrate your Massachusetts coastal MCFRM, the coastal resilience flood risk modeling, to have that incorporated into policies and bylaws, and to model wetland bylaw language. And so that we also have an example of a model wetland bylaw language from the Cape Cod Commission, which can serve as an example. Feel free to look at it later at your own time, which could be used for different types of regulatory enforcement measures. Also, develop a stormwater management plan, as well as join the community rating system of national flood insurance programs, and which can reward communities for measures above federal minimums, discounts to policyholders, improve coastal resiliency, improve public awareness, and for the municipality can provide floodplain expert help and conserve resources for overall safer community. I guess I could pause here, or should I pause at the end, Kim, do you think, for
I think we can keep walking through, since we probably only have like 5 or so more minutes. Maybe we just keep going through this, and then at the end we'll ask for any comments, questions.
Can I just say, can I just say something to the committee?
Of course.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I just want you guys to keep in mind that the Coastal Resilience Plan, we're updating the current plan, which was created in 2009 and then implemented over a number of years. And so then there'll be an implementation process for the updated harbor plan. But just keep in mind that, you know, the harbor plan is good for 5 or 10 years. And then, you know, our plan is good for decades. So you have to kind of focus on the things that are going to maybe be happening within the sort of the life of the plan when you're thinking about commenting. Okay, go ahead, you guys.
Hey, it's a very, very good point, Peter. Thank you. So I guess for issue number 3, the public had expressed concerns around project prioritization. I know that you in your harbor plan, as CRAC, you kind of discussed project prioritization last week, or in your last meeting, and so the town is very interested, or seems like public is very interested in hearing about that, and so we recommended to adhere to the project prioritization timeline from CRP, and I might even add here and CRP update. We could to wet and dry proof and elevate town buildings between the Harbor Masters, 30 Washington Street, 16 Broad Street, downtown police station, and then to and as another infrastructure protection, to raise the town dock to I guess an open question of what particular threshold CRAC or the town wants to set, or to convert to for that town dock leveled, or to convert to floating docks, and very focused on docks in particular, because within the harbor plan area, this is something that CCM and other sorts are interested in. Public and private cost. I mean, you just talked about betterments. You definitely are addressing this. We recommend to explore potential cost sharing models, assessments, betterments being one of the things we could include a discussion on that within the harbor plan if needed. Develop programs and policies through which homeowners assume risk due to erosion caused loss of utilities or services. Clarify regulatory expectations for private property owners. Pursue funding opportunities, increased embarkation fees, Chapter 91 non-compliance penalties, state and federal grants or coastal resilience districts. I mean, even betterments there. And then increase town budget towards coastal resilience projects with its current spend at $1 million per year, and then hire a dedicated grant writer. in section 5 with regulatory updates, explore opportunities to modify regulations. There are many different ideas for that public members had for modifying the building code, or potential ideas around coastal resilience districts. Another kind of recommendation we made was science-based triggers for policy updates. Also to develop coastal resilience districts at town level, update wetlands regulations, to enforce laws and regulations to increase compliance, to ensure compliance, conduct education outreach, implement town policy for town to take over flooded areas, a recommendation or have coastal resiliency and public access regulations flexible to the specific uses of vulnerable areas, and prioritizing solutions with multiple co-benefits. And so for community involvement in climate change, incorporate community science into monitoring initiatives, increase collaboration of on-site groups involved in coastal resiliency with different examples of different groups and places they could help. Increase so on green versus gray protections, how in vulnerable areas have site-specific assessments, and where appropriate, potential hybrid. We know that the CRP emphasizes nature-based solutions where possible, and so kind of going or reinforcing that, so to secure additional funding for natural solutions like oyster reefs, living shoreline sea grass restoration, or conduct monitoring of resilience and adaptation projects to ensure effectiveness and inform future projects, as well as creating additional project pocket parts for stormwater holding or vegetation for filtration, or then conduct a study to quantify blue carbon storage within eelgrass and marshes for potential grant funding future opportunities. And then education, to map the vulnerable locations, make a map publicly accessible online or through other means around the harbor, and to develop a town map with likelihood of future protection to inform current and future homeowners. With Leah's, I think I did, or Leah shared these ideas around to kind of developed intermediate, undeveloped or conservation categories, higher education coordinator for coastal resiliency and natural resource projects with a science background, and then encourage property owners to take coastal resilience steps, and yeah, so, and then potentially including the crack letter, which we heard that in comment, and I didn't necessarily have that. So that's a whole list of some of the issues that we came across in during the harbor plan harbor plan update from public comment. Some of the recommendations that we came up with. I know that our future there's plans for CRAC and the Harbor Plan Committee on March 18th to kind of meet, come together and discuss. We'll be discussing this matrix. We're going to bring through a very similar kind of style of meeting, or kind of to what I just did. And so any comments or ways that we can either better integrate the coastal resilience plan and the harbor plan, or how can use the harbor plan to move these projects forward. Yeah, open to any all comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, thanks. So are you all set, Kim, as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'll just take questions and comments from the committee first. Doug, go ahead.
Thank you, Peter, and nice work, guys. I skimmed through this before the meeting, and as you were speaking, Alan, one thing did just kind of jump out at me, and I apologize if I missed it. I don't see anything in here that relates to relocation programs, and it is going to be a very hot topic for CRAC, because as we were just going through our kind of reevaluation of those projects that have yet to begin, I think the consensus of this committee is that having more progressive, innovative, and persuasive policies and programs that are intended to incentivize property owners to consider relocation is probably going to be our top priority for the next round of initiatives. So I just think rather than focusing on where you say at the end here, developed areas where shore protection is almost certain, I would challenge that. I don't think that we should assume that because a stretch of shoreline is developed, that means that protection is almost certain. I think we want to be more nature driven than that. And to the degree we can, we'd rather be encouraging people to do the responsible thing for the long term, and that is to relocate. That was the only thing I called out. Thanks.
And so Doug, if you could, I noticed that you're on the list of people who will attend the meeting on the 18th.
Yes.
If you can refine that
Yeah.
For that meeting, so that then it can be added in, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for information that's going to go on the right-hand side here that will be in the plan, that will be referred to when those issues come up. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. So any other committee members have things they want to say? Okay. Not seeing any hands. I know we're all going to get, those of us who attend the meeting, hopefully everybody on the 18th will bring their comments to that meeting and contribute. If we don't have any comments from anybody, I'll open it up to the public. Are there any public comments on this presentation? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Leah. I'm sorry, thank you. Well, always thank you, Leah, but thank you, Kim, and thank you, Alan, for the presentation. And we will definitely all see, hopefully all of us will see you next week. I'll be there because I have to be.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, I hate to do this to you guys, but I skipped over number 4 for public comment when we talked about CRDs. So was there anybody after our discussion on CRDs and betterment districts in the public that has anything to say about that item? Okay. Number 6, discussion on ranking 2023 to 2026 coastal resilience plan recommendations that have not been started. Leah?
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so over the last number of weeks, some of the committee members had sent me their prioritization list of recommendations from the CRP. I compiled it all into this long document. The numbers that are in bold are the tally. So, you know, how many people, there were 6 people that said that zoning should be within the list. So from this big list, I broke it down further to 10 recommendations from the CRP that have not been started yet. Within some of those recommendations and rankings are kind of sub ones that can be, I thought could be compiled into the larger recommendation. So I have it here. I have number 1 as retreat and relocation program. And I should say that numbers 1 through 10, all of them. So for example, I'm not explaining this correctly. For example, 6 people said that zoning should be in there. 6 people said that retreat and relocation program should be in there as well. So retreat and relocation, I put as number 1. Zoning, I put within retreat and relocation because they kind of go together. Then for ranking number 2, Surfside wastewater treatment plant dune restoration. Again, up here on this larger list was one of the higher rankings, Surfside wastewater treatment. So I just wanted to explain that methodology to you. Number 3, Steamboat Wharf resilience. Number 4, DPW and landfill resilience. Number 5, stormwater management plan. Within that management plan, you could also have the stormwater bylaws assessment and the stormwater bylaw and regulation update. Number 6, Matticat road raising and bridge conversion. Number 7, Ames Ave Bridge. Number 8, numerical model of CO2 breaching. 9, sediment budget. And then 10, Matticat erosion pilot. So those were the 10. There were also discussions, which I want to discuss with you all, if we should add in funding mechanism for coastal resilience projects. So it's not a CRP, you know, one of the 40 recommendations, but it has been on seems like this committee's mind for a while. And then also, I would like to move up the bridge conversion at Folgers Marsh. So the timeline for that is something like 2035. But because the risks have increased, so the culvert is undersized, it's not functioning properly, and also there is a small sinkhole on that road over the culvert. So the road does need to get fixed. So that a committee member had also asked me, how do we move up the target implementation years that are, were set in the CRP a couple of years ago, but obviously risks change. Generally, that procedure is staff looks at the risks, and we, determine, yes, this should get pushed up by X amount of years, and then bring it to crack, and we can have a discussion about that as well. Okay, Peter, I am done explaining. Happy to answer questions. I don't know how you want to go from here.
Okay, thanks, Leah. We have 2 hands raised. Doug, do you want to go first?
Sarah can go.
Okay, Sarah, you go.
Okay, thanks. These are just quick comments based on Leah's presentation. Thank you, Leah. It really helps to have this like updated list and with the opinions of everybody. And so this kind of I don't know if it's top 10 or just these new, like kind of prioritizing these projects. And so with that in mind, the kind of the red highlighted area, my 2 cents would be just the funding mechanism. I think it's important to have there, but I generally think it's an ongoing thing. So I don't think of that as like a priority project. But of course, we're kind of constantly bringing it up so that we're thinking about that. It's always in our minds. And I think having this list of 10 priority or rankings will have these, some of these are more very project specific rather than the bigger picture project of retreat and relocation plan. And so as different funding opportunities come up and we're like all the different things that we see and know about, I think that'll help with that funding piece, but I kind of like to think of it as in the background thing. And then I also support putting the Folgers Marsh bridge conversion up and moving that timeline up. I think for all the reasons that you mentioned, Leah, it's very timely, it's necessary, and I think pushing it out too far to even start planning is going to just delay it that much more. And as you said, we need to be adaptive as the risks change and as things happen. And so I would support moving that up.
And I'm going to go to Jen in just a minute, but just holding on to that thought for a minute, Sarah, if you support moving it up, since there are already 10 items there, which items, as we talk about bumping them in place of the ones that are below that need to be added, which ones do we think about could be bumped?
May I respond?
Yes.
I think I understand your question, but I think rather than bumping, I think this is one where we can add an 11. I don't think of it as, so we can come up, my opinion is we can come up with our priority based on what we know needs to happen in timeline phase, but also the funding opportunities dictate which ones get picked out. So even though if this is our top 10, if there's like we saw with the, we've seen with stormwater management, if there's suddenly an RFP for a funding opportunity that's specific to stormwater management, this is just a random example, but then like that one's going to rise to the surface of action and funding because there's like a targeted funding. Similarly with something like rising the Folgers Marsh, if there's, surrounding landowners and homeowners who are interested in pursuing a collaborative funding with the town, I don't know, maybe that's possible. Then I think that might be something that puts it to the higher up. But I don't think our arbitrary list of 10 or 11 or 12 or 15 means that something else doesn't get to happen, if that makes sense.
Okay. I just threw bumping something out there to see what people would say, and I'm fully on board with making the list longer. Absolutely don't want to leave anything out, and I don't want to deprioritize anything. But anyway, go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Pete. I I was the committee member that asked Leah, how do we bump things up in the timeline? Because I was disappointed that the Folgers Marsh didn't get put into the CapEx request for this town meeting based on where its priority was in the CRP, because it's something that, obviously NCF is a landowner of the marsh itself, but we don't own the road. So we're trying to figure out how can we work collaboratively with the town and neighbors to move that project forward. It actually washed over this weekend. The tides were high enough that the road was flooded overnight. I think it was Saturday night this week. So the risk is there, as Leah said, but how it played out when we did the CRP, its time frame was later than now in reality seems to be the case. So that was my question. How do we move things up on that timeline when we see impacts happening? And this list that we put together was initially projects that we hadn't started work on. So the Folgers Marsh Bridge wasn't even on the list then because we thought it was going to town meeting and CapEx request. So I would have voted for the Folgers Marsh one if it had been on the list. And since now it's not happening, finding a way to make sure that it's on that priority list. So again, as Sarah said, if funding opportunities come up, we can show it as a priority. I don't know if you have to bump things or move things, but in my mind, I equate the work that has to happen at Pulpus Road and Folgers Marsh is very similar to the work that has to happen at Mattakit and the bridge raising there. Like those are both two infrastructure projects that in my mind are kind of fairly equal in importance and impact. So I do think that this list is really helpful, and I think it captures what the committee's talked about. So thank you.
Great. Really appreciate your comments, Jen. So Leah, go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. Jen just brought up what my question was. So I wanted to ask the committee, where on this list do you want to put, since it seems like there might be a consensus, the Folgers Marsh project? What number ranking would you want to see it? And maybe we take some time to think about where that goes. And you can email me if you don't have something to say.
Yeah, real quick. Thanks, Peter. I would just suggest that maybe we try to make it as objective as possible in ranking these in the sense of assessing what's the relative number of people whose daily lives would be affected by each of these projects. And if Folgers Marsh affects more people than, let's say, Ames Avenue Bridge, I imagine it does, perhaps that's a logic that would lead us to rank it in one spot versus another. Thanks.
So Leah, you're saying we have a little bit more time to think about this?
Yeah, this doesn't have to get done today. Well, you all have this, so.
Let's continue it to the next meeting, for sure.
Okay.
And everybody come with your, where we're gonna fit these items in this list. Does that work for everybody? Okay, great. If there's no one else who has a comment, are there any public oh, wait a minute, go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, I'm still having trouble with my hand. I am just chiming in because I remember when we first made this list, I don't remember who said it, but somebody made a comment that maybe Surfside came up higher on the list because we had just recently been there. And I guess I would love to understand a little bit more from Leah and Vince, how important that project is. And you don't have to answer this now, but I will admit that we have an aerial downstairs from 1951 that shows the Surfside wastewater treatment plant. And it's pretty darn close to overwashing at that point. And then apparently there was a period of accretion. And this is all, kind of hearsay for me, but I would just like to know a little bit more about the trajectory of that area over time, so that I feel like I could accurately rank that. I recognize it's a project that has a huge impact on, most of the island. So I also see that component of it. But I guess I started to question, I just felt like I didn't have as much information as I wanted in order to be able to make that decision.
You're about to put up your hand. Okay, go ahead, Leah.
Rachel, I'll have to do a deep dive into the historic area of Surfside Treatment Plant because I'm not sure about it. So I'll get back to you on that one. But I do know when FEMA came out here to do the erosion projection study, they did the area, I guess the beach area, kind of to the east of that area. It was an accretion site, and now it's obviously not. So I also know that the Surfside Rip has kind of shifted to the west. So not sure if that plays into it or not, but yeah, I'll have to do some history on that and get back to you.
I think it does play into it. And I think that's what, I was in a conversation that was talking about that, where that rip is located, it hasn't moved back. Again, not claiming to have all the information, but some history in that area would be fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Leah. Vince, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Peter. Very brief, very minor, not minor at all. I'm delighted to see that you guys are ranking and looking at how to change things in the CRP of what you want to see done next and in what orders. That is exactly how the CRP was envisaged to be a living document. And that's the kind of thing that I'm delighted to see and trying to work out the debate on. And that's the hard question. How do you pick out those top 10? And I'd hate to try and expand it out because then you just bring in the whole CRP, but the risk is changing. So I wonder if we need to do some kind of study jointly with NCF perhaps to look at the risk assessment for Folgers Marsh, for the erosion that's going on at the sewer beds, and try and see about some kind of very short encapsulated study or some kind of extremely short amendment to the CRP that can capture that, there's an update that's needed because there's another risk that's been realized. So I hate to give the answer that a study is needed, but this time it might be.
All right, thanks, Vince. Do we have any more comments on this? If we don't, are there any public comments on this item? Okay. I can see us continuing this to the March 26th meeting. Okay, number 7, edits, discussion, and approval of CRAC's fourth quarter update for select board. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. Do you want me to go in detail with this presentation or just go through the slides, and if people have comments,
yeah,
or
do it that way. I'm gonna close my video, run down to the bathroom, but I have my headphones on so I can hear you guys. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks
good.
for your understanding.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again.
Okay.
So fourth quarter presentation is a little bit late, but that was from October to December. Key highlights got here. You guys have all of this in your packet. If there's any additional highlights, please let me know now. We can kind of go through it now. Nothing? Okay. So slide 1 is all about your public outreach campaign, the social media stuff, the aligned organizations putting some CRP stuff in their newsletters. I'm working on updating the town's webpage, and then also you've been working on informational brochure for real estate agents and home buyers. Any comments about that? None. Okay. You developed a survey for area associations, and that survey is closed, and I actually have the information from it. So I think next meeting or the following, I'll present about that. Had over 300 participants, which is great. And then from that, you'll take that information and figure out what we're going to do with it. Comments about this section? No. I gave an example about presentations that I give to homeowner associations. So just go through kind of my general layout for that. Comments, questions? No. Then we had a great presentation by Kurt Bosma about the DAPs and how those can be used for coastal resilience projects. I had to make 2 slides out of this because there was so much information. So the process of DAPs and then how it was used in Falmouth, and what I'll explain what all these things mean when I give it to the select board. Then we had another presentation from Courtney Rocha about the MVP program and the grants available, and the 3 recommendations that she said would be would qualify and be competitive for the MVP grant. And we had a discussion with Daniel from SDEP about the letter that you all wrote a couple years ago regarding Chapter 91 licenses, and then he gave an update about which are out right now, and there is a comment period for them for the updated Chapter 91 and waterways regulations. Then we had a discussion of the offshore wind grant and what to submit for that. Vince gave a harbor sediment transport study update. I gave an update of the coastal zone management grant and what that entails. There were no requests or recommendations that I could find through the minutes and agenda items, but if I've missed it, please let me know. So this would be from the time from October to December of the meetings. And that is, that's the rest of it.
Okay, thanks, Leah.
Yeah. So I'll just need if anybody has edits or suggestions, if not, to approve it so that I can bring it in front of the select board.
Okay, it doesn't sound like there are any comments. So unless there are, all right, wait a minute. Of course, there's a comment.
No, there's only.
Okay,
No, I was just going to move to approve.
Oh, good. Okay.
You guys, I'm noticing that there's not quorum anymore, so that's a bummer.
All right, who left?
Joanna, Rachel, and Tim.
I'm gonna go see them in 5 minutes.
I know Tim had to leave early, but the other 2 I did not know. So,
well,
I guess we're gonna have to wait until next meeting to get it approved.
Okay, we will put this.
Were you going to approve that? Were you going to present that this Wednesday?
No, okay. No. So you all approve it, and then I send it to the select board, and they decide when to put it on the agenda.
So we'll put it at the top of the agenda for March 26th. That's our next meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, oh well.
Can I know we can't do any more business anyway, but can I make a suggestion to Leah and Pete? Our agendas have been super packed the last couple of meetings, and I would maybe suggest we put a few less things on our agenda so that we can, like when we have a guest speaker, to give them the full breadth of being able to fully present. And then also like if we have to make a decision about something that we can all talk about it. I think everything we talked about today was super important. I don't know how to, divvy it up differently or spread it out, because I know some things are very timely, but just, I feel like a lot of our meetings, we rush, and we cut people off so that we can get to the next thing. And I feel like as a group, we need a chance to discuss things as a group together to come up with consensus sometimes. Just a suggestion. I don't know how to make it possible, but.
Well, it's definitely possible, Sarah, as long as, we don't have things that are pressing. So we could have planned, item number 4 with Kate and Vicky to dominate the meeting and only have the stuff at the bottom, the approval of the minutes, the new business items and all that stuff, the stuff that takes no time at all. we could have planned it that way, but then something could come along that's timely that we have to do.
Mhm.
And it's, I totally see what you're saying, but it's being able to get Vicky and Kate in the same room at the same time. And so it worked for this. And of course, they're always going to want to come back and help us. So I say we try our absolute best to make the meetings not as packed. There's just going to be times when we need a vote on something and we got to have it on there. So maybe one way you can do it is that this item, the fourth quarter update, could be at the top of the meeting. We get that done. We might even shift the agenda around a bit and have the new business committee stuff, approval of minutes, which most people approve the minutes at the beginnings of the meetings anyway, and get all that stuff out of the way. Then we can have the rest of the meeting for the fun stuff. I'm on two other committees, the Harbor Plan Committee and SHAB, and that's how we do it. We do the chairman's report, we do the approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes in the beginning, and then we get into the meat of it. So I, of course, with Leah's approval, have no problem at all putting the stuff at the beginning so we can blow through that, and then we can, spend 5 hours on some agenda item. Well, not 5 hours.
That's a good idea, Peter. Yeah.
And you guys all, we don't have a quorum anymore, but I'm seeing heads shaking, nodding, and that's what we want to try and do. So Leah and I will meet and talk about it and rearrange the structure of the agenda so that we can get the clerical stuff out of the way, and then maybe maybe we'll just have one or two big things at the end, and we can go all the way to the end. So
you also have the option to vote and move it to the next meeting as well. So if it seems like there's a time crunch and someone's going over, then you can all vote to move it to the next agenda so that you're not rushing through things as well.
And I agree with what you just said. Just remember though that you do that, but then something else comes up that's timely that we have to deal with. Anyway, so Lee and I will hash it out, and you'll see a different, hopefully, agenda next time. Okay. Okay, so public outreach ideas, strategies from committee members, updated media scorecard summary from Doug Rose. Do you have anything to show us, Doug?
Yeah, it was in the packet. It's this time it's actually readable. It's just a bar chart, and it says we're doing pretty well lately. So those are the highlights. How's that?
Okay. I assume we all saw it. And does anybody have any comments on it? Nope. I think you're all thinking lunch. So, and we lost Matt too, didn't we? Yep. Let's see, approval of the minutes. We can't do that. That's for the next meeting. New business committee, natural resources department reports from our various committees and boards. I guess that's just me. And I don't have anything to tell you from SHAB except for we are, and this may have bearing on the harbor plan update, but we are about to start a process of amending our shellfish regulations with an emphasis on aquaculture regulations. And also Sheila Lucy, our harbor master, is going to be bringing before us a draft regulations to regulate the dinghy docks down on the town pier, because there is a situation on that. So just letting you know. And Leah?
Thanks, Peter. I'll be very quick. I had a couple updates on the agenda for under there. Spoke with the Steamship Authority's general manager and a couple of the members from the Nantucket board about their resilience planning, and they put in a grant to start that resilience planning. It's a federal grant, so I think they find out in the summer. So it'd be like a feasibility assessment of the area. So they're thinking about the planning process, and hopefully we'll get that grant as well. And I emphasized how the town and steamship really need to work together to ensure that those two projects are integrated, so that people can get to the steamship, and vice versa. I also suggested that, or offered that I could be, a resilience advisor for the project as well, to ensure that conversation continues. So hopefully that will happen as well. The Washington Street Resilience Framework Project, I am part of the working group as well, staff member for that. And we meet generally the first Thursday of each month at 11. It's hybrid, and we're working out the scope for that project right now. So not really much to update about that. I will be working on a website for it on the town. You can get it at the town website. So Kim wanted me to let you all know that the Concom wetland regulation hearing is this Thursday at 5 p.m. So it was supposed to be last week or 2 weeks ago, but it got continued. So this Thursday. That's all I've got.
And thanks, Leah. Somebody told me that the increase in the buffer zone from 25 to 50, that the Concom wants it to go to 75. Has anybody heard that? No? This person who told me that is largely uninformed about town issues, but he was quite adamant that this was going to happen. And I said, no, it's 25 to 50. I hadn't heard it. So, and I'm bummed that Tim isn't here to inform us, but I guess we'll find out on Thursday.
I can also look into that
Okay.
and email you all, but I have not heard anything.
Okay.
There was a packet last week that had, I think, all those details in it on the Concom packet. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a meeting worth attending for sure. So, all right. Well, the next meeting is March 26, 2024. Since we don't have a quorum, how do we adjourn then?
Vince, can I ask you that? And I have not encountered this before.
And I don't think I've encountered it ever either. I think the only clever thing to do would be to acknowledge the meeting be over, Peter, and close by consensus. No vote.
Okay. Or if we just want to stay here and look at each other,
Correct.
we're all such
Crack
beautiful
meetings
people.
never die. They just fade away.
I think you have to drop your mic. Like you just drop it and then walk away.
Drop my pen. I myself find myself curiously entranced by the fish that RJ is holding. So RJ can drop the fish. Here, I'm dropping my pen right now. Okay.
Thanks, Pete.
All right.
Bye.
See you guys later.
Bye, everyone.
Stay on for a minute.
Leah, just end the recording.
Thank you, Vince.